Hey, gents. Got a question for you. Do you
What's up, buddy?
do you like new characters getting introduced into your Marvel Cinematic Universes?
Always.
Oh, hell yeah.
Do you want to learn about some of those new characters maybe today?
Maybe,
Of
yeah.
course. Absolutely.
Yeah.
Then why don't you guys stick around and watch this episode of the Real Hero Show?
We'll be here.
Okay.
Welcome back to the Real Hero Show, everybody. Corey, Kevin, and Nick here as always. And spoiler warning up front, if you haven't seen episode 2 of The Falcon and the Winter Soldier, in today's episode, we're going to talk about some of the new characters that were introduced, their comic backgrounds, and how they may fit into the greater MCU. If you're new to the channel, please go ahead and like this video, subscribe to the channel, and click that little bell so you get notifications for all of our future content. And, you know, boys, as we said up front, this episode really started to expand upon the Captain America lore. We were introduced to 4 new characters in this one that we had not really seen on screen. We saw, John Walker at the very end of the first episode, but we really hadn't gotten any information about who he was or where he came from or anything. And then we also got Lemar Hoskins, Battlestar, Isaiah Bradley, and Elijah Bradley. So we figured for this video, we'd kind of dive into who those characters are, what their motivations might be in this series, and then maybe in the MCU past that. So boys, you want to start with our man, punchable Captain America?
Mr. Johnny
Yeah,
Walker himself.
That's a good place to start, I think.
Sweet. So John Walker, he basically starts out as like the antithesis of Steve Rogers, right? Steve Rogers is from the Northeast. John Walker is from rural Georgia. Steve Rogers is very old. John Walker is a up and coming youngster. You know, that the author of the comic had actually wrote that he tried to do everything to make him as similar to Steve, but as different from Steve at the same time, which is pretty fascinating. He wants to become a hero to honor his brother, who died in a house fire saving their parents, which is pretty interesting. He is a Christian right-wing conservative with very, very, very hard-line views on things. He uses guns without issue. At one point in the comics, he's trained by the Taskmaster on how to use Captain America's shield, which is pretty fascinating because of the fact that Taskmaster is the Black Widow villain, and we haven't seen that movie yet. In the comics, he does get injected with some super serum. He's experimented on by a character called the Power Broker, which we heard a name drop to at the end of episode 2 of Falcon and Winter Soldier.
Did.
Pretty interesting. And really, the most important thing is he's a pretty brutal. He's a killer in the comics, which we haven't really seen quite yet in the show, but he has a very dark side and gets pretty violent. So
we saw him pull a gun.
He did shoot a guy.
He did shoot a guy, which Cap had a gun back in the first Avenger, but then after that he doesn't use one again for the remainder of his time in the MCU. So what do you guys think about this? Do you think this is something that this character, does he become a villain? Is he bad but then turns good? Like, based off of this stuff from the comics, where do you think this could go?
I think if there's something we learned from what they pull from the comics and what they use in the MCU, could be 2 entirely different things, right? Like, we thought Mephisto was going to be in WandaVision every episode, but we were proven wrong.
Very wrong.
I don't know. Could John Walker get the super soldier serum? It's very well possible, because we heard the Power Broker name. We know that there are other super soldiers, 8 of them to be exact, as Bucky said to Isaiah. So it's very well possible that Mr. Walker becomes a super soldier himself, and then is the villain, and then Falcon and Sam and Bucky have to Sam and Bucky have to put him down, which I'm all for, and they take the shield.
Well, it sounded to me like at the end of that episode when they, what's her name, the leader of the Flag Smashers, got the message, Carly.
Yeah.
She got the message on the cell phone that said, what you stole from me, I want it back.
Right.
I'm assuming that is the super soldier serum. That's what they stole. So
I'm actually assuming, Kevin, that's Liam Neeson on the other line, and she took his daughter, and he has a very particular set of skills.
He does.
What if Liam Neeson is the power broker?
Yo,
God.
Oh
Game
man,
over.
I'll flip a table.
That'd be great.
Liam Neeson.
Anyway, I'm sorry for interrupting you. Please continue.
No, that's all right. I mean, but obviously the super soldier serum, at least in a form, one form or another, is still out there.
Yeah.
So and I guess that's kind of what they're going to talk to Zemo about at the end of the movie.
Yeah.
Or at the end of the show. See,
it
feels like a movie.
It feels like a movie. No, I can't blame you for that, for sure. Cool. Yeah. So that's John Walker. Very excited to see where that character goes. His I don't want to call him a sidekick because I feel like sidekick is an insulting term maybe at this point. But the next character on the list is Lemar Hoskins.
R2-3PO.
Yeah, and he goes by the name Battlestar. The reason he goes by the name Battlestar is because in the comics, there was a campaign to find a new Bucky for the new Captain America, as fucked up as that sounds. And Lemar Hoskins ends up being the person that's picked to be Bucky. But then I guess for some reason or another, that's considered like a insulting term towards African Americans, so he switches his name to Battlestar. He was also experimented on by the Power Broker at the same time as John Walker, so they're both super powered individuals. He has an adamantium shield at one point in the comics, which is very interesting because Kevin's mutant theory will never die, and adamantium, green. I mean, come on, right? I mean, it's good enough to slap your microphone after flexing, so it's good. The funniest thing I saw about Battlestar when I was doing my research is that he joins a group that's ran by Howard the Duck called the Ducky Dozen, and they go to fight a group of zombie Nazis from Earth 21519.
Well, the really amazing thing is that Howard the Duck exists in this MCU. We've seen him twice.
He's
possible.
You get another COVID spike, and who knows? Kevin Feige might be like, "Fuck it, let's do some filler shit."
We're greenlighting the Howard the Duck show.
Right.
James Gunn, executive producer.
I do like when in the episode when Bucky asked what his name was, and he said Battlestar, and Bucky kind of just laughed. It's like, stop the car.
I'm getting out. This is ridiculous. Fucking amateur hour here. Battlestar kind of sounds like a Transformers name, if we're being honest.
Yeah, for sure.
But,
I'm like Battlestar.
It's definitely sci-fi.
Galactica.
I mean, it makes me think of Galactica,
right,
obviously.
Yeah, and his if you look up his comic attire on Google, some of it looks a little bit like professional wrestler-esque, which is pretty interesting.
Yeah.
So it's a different take. You probably won't see anything that looks anywhere near that in the MCU because they're much more grounded in their approach. But it is cool though to see that John Walker's not going at it alone. He's got backup. And they come from the same background, military, all that fun stuff. So next on the list would be Isaiah Bradley, who we saw in this episode when Sam and Bucky go to Baltimore to visit. He is known in like underground circles as the Black Cap, and he's featured in a comic that's called Red, White, and Black, which I actually reread the week before Falcon Winter Soldier came out. Essentially, what happens in that comic is there are about 300 black men that are brought to a military base that are part of a military platoon, and it turns out that it's a secret experiment to test super serum on them, which is it kind of reflects how black folks used to be tested on first way back in the day because their lives were not valued the same as white people. So it's a really interesting comic. A lot of these people that get tested on in the comic, their heads get too big, their hearts explode, they die. And out of all 300 of these black men, Isaiah Bradley is the only one that survives, and he gains super strength and is basically an equivalent to Captain America. He goes on a mission over in Europe, and he actually steals Cap's uniform for the mission, and he's successful. But when he gets back from the mission, the US government calls him like treasonous, and they put him in jail, and he's in jail for like 17 years or something before he's let out. And then he moves back to Brooklyn, so a little bit different from what we saw in the show. And at the end of the comic, a modern day Steve Rogers goes and finds him and makes amends with him. So again, Nick, like you said, they do flex the comic stories out a little bit to fit in what works best with the MCU, but really fascinating character. Obviously at the end of this episode, we still saw that he's got his power still. He's hiding it, you know, and he's just living his life as a normal human being, while kind of having legend status in the underground. So to me, that's a very fascinating character. I don't know what you guys think.
I thought it was a great character, and to hear that he whooped Bucky's ass back when they were both in their prime, ripped off half of his metal arm. That's awesome. You know, he's just like this old school grandpa, this OG that you just don't want to fuck with.
Yeah, no, for sure. And it kind of made me think, like, if Isaiah ripped off half of Bucky's metal arm at the time, granted, now probably not so much because it's made of vibranium.
Vibranium,
but you know, it's interesting because, you know, the way Isaiah felt then, he still feels now, right? But for the flip side, you know, where he says to Bucky, like, you know, your people, which he's referring to as Hydra, right? Like, but Bucky's like, I'm not a killer anymore. So he's trying to change. So I wonder if we're going to see Isaiah maybe kind of change a little bit too here.
Does he suit up in his old age? That'd be pretty cool.
I mean, that would be badass, right?
It would be badass. I'm not sure we're going to see a hell of a lot more out of Isaiah. I think that might have been like we want to acknowledge his existence, and he might be there for some plot, you know, moving the plot along. But I question to think how much we're actually going to see out of him.
I think we might see him one more time because towards the end of the episode, rather after Bucky gets arrested, and you see Sam kind of looks back at the house. So I wonder if they go back one last time, and my theory would be if they're going up against what's his face, Walker and Hoskins, about if they do become super soldiers themselves, hey, we need someone else.
Yeah, could be. That'd be fun.
And maybe he kind of gets back in the limelight as you know, for what he did for the country, right?
Yeah.
So
hey,
that'd be cool to see.
Refresh my memory just real quick, and I don't want to get super into it, but Cap aged, as we saw. Isaiah aged.
Yeah.
But Cap stayed young for a long time because he was frozen.
Yep. Right.
Has Bucky stayed young because they just kept re-upping his serum? Or
they put him in stasis.
He was frozen as well.
Was he in stasis? Okay, I couldn't remember.
They basically
that part.
woke him up for every mission he'd go on, and then when he reported back, they put him back on ice.
Gotcha. Okay.
I was
blanking on that. It's been a lot of movies.
You think about it, like, oh yeah, he's killed a lot of people. He worked for, like, you know, the enemy of the United States, right? Like, but at the same time, like, A, he was brainwashed. B, he was put back on ice every single time, right?
Yeah.
Like, imagine, like, no wonder he's fucked in the head, right?
Yeah.
Like, you can't blame the guy, really.
I'd watch TV sitting on the hardwood floor too if I were him.
Yeah.
Good.
He doesn't have any money to buy furniture, Corey.
Yeah, I know. There's apparently no stipend for Avengers.
Yeah, exactly.
In the show, but so Isaiah is not the only member of the Bradley family who has a history in Marvel Comics. He does have a lineage, and the young fellow who answers the door in this episode is, I believe, I don't know if they name dropped him or not, but I'm we're pretty sure that that's Elijah Bradley. And
I think the subtitles said.
Does it say Elijah?
I think okay. I remember seeing that. Yeah.
So he's Isaiah's grandson in the comics. He is a hero known as Patriot, and he's somebody who is just a very, very strong, talented individual, cares to fight, gets into a skirmish where he tries to use Captain America's shield to save Captain America and gets hurt pretty bad. And when he goes to the hospital, Isaiah gives him a blood transfusion, and the blood that goes into Elijah's body has the super serum into it, and then he has a reaction to it and develops superhuman strength and speed and resistance the same way that anyone else like a Steve Rogers or Bucky Barnes does. So he becomes enhanced. He uses a replica of Cap's very first shield, so he doesn't have like a circular one. It's got kind of that like more concave look to it with the stars on top. And most interestingly, he is a member of the Young Avengers, which, as we've seen, we've got Billy and Tommy from WandaVision. Hawkeye series is happening. This Marvel series is happening. You've got a potential Patriot sighting in here. Lays the groundwork for potentially something in the future, which
Ironheart,
very exciting. Yeah, Ironheart. Yeah, so that part's very exciting. It's a typical Marvel like, hey, don't forget that person, even though they're
the seeds.
30 seconds.
Yeah, I mean, we a lot of these Young Avengers. The article that I was reading was like, hey, we don't know if the Young Avengers are coming to the MCU. They are coming. They're here. They're already here.
Yeah.
What we don't know is if or when they'll get their own franchise. Right. But I mean, we've got Cassie Lang. We've got Ms. Marvel coming. We've got, like you mentioned, Hawkeye. I mean, a lot of these characters are already on the screen, and hell, they could pull Peter Parker in there.
Or Miles Morales.
Miles Morales is what I was going to say. There's a lot of talk about him entering the MCU. So
he already exists, right? So
his uncle at least.
Yeah, he's name dropped. So I got a nephew that lives in this area.
Yeah. So they're there. It's kind of a matter of time. So not a lot of screen time from Elijah in this one, and we don't really know a lot about him just from this episode. But it's really exciting. To see where they could go from here.
Yeah, and it's just kind of incredible. I mean, you look at this is the Marvel machine operating at its peak, right? Like you introduced 4 characters in 45 minutes while also continuing the story of your 2 main leads, and you've completely just like spidered out new parts of the MCU, which is terrific.
And they mentioned the big 3 twice.
That's amazing.
Androids, aliens, and wizards.
Yeah, man.
That whole Gandalf part in The Hobbit was just icing on the cake for me.
So great. Great.
That made me laugh really hard when he was like, in 1937 when it came out. And if you Google it, that is when The Hobbit came out. Was 1937. So
it was pre World War II.
Bucky was holding that joke for 90 years.
Yeah.
I knew reading this book in 1937 would pay off. The question is, I wonder if he's watched the movies since. Probably not, but
in 60 or what is it, 60 FPS or is it 120 that they did the high frame rate? Or
60.
Okay, yeah. For Desolation of Smaug.
Yeah.
I just imagine Bucky in a movie theater like, whoa.
Yeah.
Gandalf.
Mind blown.
Gandalf is real. And he's Magneto.
Doctor Strange is a sorcerer because he doesn't have a hat.
Doesn't have a hat. See? Huh?
Oh man,
I love it. Perfect. Cool. Well, let's wrap this video up. I hope you guys learned something paying attention to this one. If you did, please leave us a comment below. Let us know which of these characters you're most excited about seeing where their future goes, and what the MCU has in store for them. And as always, like the video, subscribe to the channel, turn on those notifications so that way you never miss another video from us. Until next time, we will see you guys in the next video.